Hey everyone, this is another solo advice video. This time I'm talking about Red Clay. It's a Freddie Hubbard tune, and this specific arrangement I'm talking about is by Mark Taylor. So the solo section, which in the music happens in two spots. First at 47, then again at 73. But the main thing to remember is that this tune pretty much stays true to the Freddie Hubbard original. In the Mark Taylor arrangement, chords happen in the same spot. The comping might be different depending on what you're playing. Like if you're playing piano, it might be in a different spot. But that's just because it's a written out comp. So for soloists, this is going to help you a lot. The song was so much fun to play on. It looks complicated, but I'm going to show you now that it's a lot easier than you believe it to be. First, let's take a look at this. We're going to look at the solo section here. Looking at this, we see things moving along, but all these chords look kind of unrelated and a little bit complicated. Now, if you've watched videos of mine before in the past, I've talked a lot about something called 2, 5, 1. Man, that's really hard to write with this trackpad, sorry. So this 2-5-1 happens all over the place. And the way that you can find the 2-5-1 is going to be looking for a combination of things. First, you want to look for notes that are going up in fourths. If we look here at the beginning, it starts with C, then we go to B flat. That's not really going up in fourths. But if we look what happens next, B flat to E to A, those are all moving up in fourths. That's a big clue. The other clue for 2-5-1 is that it needs to be a minor 7 to a dominant 7 to a major 7. And we have a minor 7 to a dominant 7 to a major 7. That's what the triangle stands for. So these chords sound like this, with a little bit of color on them. And the basic version sounds like this, with just 3 and 7 and the root. So that's a 2-5-1. What might be interesting for some of you is that this 2-5-1 is embedded in the middle of the solo section. We only have 4 measures, but the 2-5-1 is usually, I don't know, at the beginning. You'd have like 1-6-2-5, I guess, or 2-5-1-6, something or other. But here it's in the middle. Now we look to see what's going to happen next, and A flat to D, that's a big jump, and it's a weird jump. A flat to D. But if we keep following this and look through the repeats, we have D, G, C. Now these are all moving up in fourths. Sorry. And remember, the other thing we need to look for are minor 7, dominant 7, and major 7. But this isn't exactly matching up. And I'll tell you why. Because this is still a 2-5-1, except now we're doing a minor version. So we're doing 2, minor 7, go like this, flat 5. Then we got 5-7 with this little flat 9. And then we go to our 1, minor 7, or sometimes it's a minor 6. Usually for the minor versions of these 2-5-1s, we'll see this flat 9 often, and it'll usually revolve to a minor 6. So that's going to sound like this. D minor 7 flat 5, G7 flat 9, C minor 7. There's the minor 6. So listen to how this is built. So there's the D minor 7 flat 5, natural 5 to flat 5. Then we have the G7. So the cool thing about this, the D minor 7 flat 5 to the G7, is that the only note that changes really is the C of the D chord. The flat 7 is going to go down a half step. And then we play the minor 7 or the minor 6. Back to why I think this piece is so easy to solo on. If you've watched other videos, you'll know that I try to find things to make things easier. And believe me, this is easier. It doesn't seem like it so far, but just trust me on this. So we have 2 2-5-1s on this solo section, and it repeats over and over and over. Let's look at this one in the beginning. So what do we do for 2-5-1s? Well, there's a couple of things. The first thing we can do is we can play the scale of the home key. And the home key is where the 2-5 is moving to, 1. So you can play this A flat scale over these two chords and it's going to sound great. And keep in mind that this is A flat major. And then you're going to do the same thing here for D minor, G7 to the C7, C minor 7. You're going to be playing C minor. You could play... Now I'm on the B flat minor 7. Now I'm going to play an A flat major scale in that scale. Now I'm back to C minor. So using scales, I mean, it's going to sound really nice. If you're in jazz band, the jazz band that I direct, I talk about a concept called lanes and switching lanes. So the basic thing that you can do when you're thinking about soloing is you can look at the roots. Now, if you wanted to solo using just the roots, you could do it, but it'd be pretty boring. Now, of course, you're going to use those notes in a solo, but as a solo, it's pretty weak. So the next thing we can do is add 3 and 7. We can also add scales, and that's what I'm talking about here. This is one option. So I'm going to erase this stuff. Option 1 is to play scales. And this is the 2-5-1, major and minor, okay? So this is your first real option, and that includes playing 3 and 7 and dancing around the scales, making it fun. The other thing that you can do, and this is what I'm talking about changing lanes, is that if I wanted to play C minor, and I wanted to keep playing that scale over the whole thing, there's only one note that doesn't work, it's this D. So if I take that D out, that starts to sound like something else. Especially if I add that flat 5. And what I'm playing and hinting at is that the blues scale is like the best on this song. It sounds really fun and it's really effortless, especially if you're playing a C instrument like piano, vibes, trombone. If you've learned your concert B flat or concert C blues scale, then you're basically, you've got it. That's what you should be doing the whole time in this song. It sounds really slick and it's cool because the notes work. Listen. So I'm messing around a little bit, but you get the idea pretty quick is that I can just play the blues and I can come up with some really cool stuff. So you can get some really good licks in there, and blues is something that everybody is comfortable with when they're doing jazz at first. So that's a good thing. I'm going to go back to this topic of changing lanes, okay? The idea of changing lanes is that you want to have a dominant scale that you work with in your solo, in your mind. It's easier this way when you're starting out. Because when you listen to people play these professional recordings or go to see live jazz, people are playing all this crazy stuff and it seems so like disconnected, like it's just coming out of nowhere. But in reality, they're operating on a multi-lane highway of information going simultaneously at the same time. They're thinking of their scales, They're thinking of individual chords and the arpeggios built within them. They're thinking of scales that would work over a group of chords. They're thinking of various jazz scales like blues, or I teach the altered major pentatonic, the amp scale. So what you can do to make a step towards that is to stick with the blues scale, and then every once in a while, as you're keeping track, go to the 2-5-1. Throw in one of those notes that isn't in the blues scale. For instance, that's a terrible example. I wish I practiced more. But you can see that if I practice a lot and I really wanted to, get this performance ready, man, I could make something really well, basing my solo off of the blues and keeping that extra lane going in my mind, that I have this 2-5-1, that I can access these two simple scales of A flat major and C minor. I hope this video was helpful. Happy practicing. Let me know if you have any questions. See ya.